Okay, we are recording.
Right. Rupert,
Okay,
over to you.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so thanks, Robin. Thanks for the opportunity to speak briefly. So Noel and myself are from C3IA Solutions. Most of you know of us, or we've discussed over the past couple of years. We are an ICT and information security company. We're based in Poole, so that's the whole Dorset piece. And a large part of our work is into government and defence. And most of the cyber team are NCSC certified professionals and working in risk assessment, risk management, and applying government security guidance and policies and Ministry of Defence guidance and policies to projects and programs that are building new capability. One of the things that I've noticed from our commercial side, though, is that because of that heritage, we're getting a lot of inquiries from commercial companies now that are obviously trying to supply into or work within government and Ministry of Defence, particularly because there's been obviously increased focus on supply chain and on information security generally over the last couple of years. And it's, how do you actually now work in that environment? How do you access the information you need to be able to respond to bids or to ask questions? And whereas I think probably, several years ago, there were workarounds, the information sharing at different classification levels is, and putting the right assurance around that is much, much more important. So we've had a definitely increase in those questions. It's become a more complex area. And so I thought, it might be useful just to have a little bit of a session here to provide an awareness of the sorts of things you need to be thinking about, talk about the supply chain processes a bit, talk about information sharing generally. And so I asked Noel, who's one of our principal consultants, very deeply experienced, both commercially and Ministry of Defence, and he'll I'm sure introduce himself to maybe just look over that landscape a little bit and give some pointers, and that's it really. So Noel.
Yeah, just bear with me a second. I'm just having a last minute PowerPoint faff, and I shall crack on. Just bear with me a sec. There we go. Dealing with multiple monitors was a good.
My monitor's not working this morning. Oh, come on.
There we go. I'm on now. Okay, so can you see a canoeist or a kayakist, whichever?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, well that's not me.
That's it's Foxy, isn't it?
Foxy, indeed. Yeah, we sponsor Foxy, and we let him star at the start of our presentations. We sponsored his Yukon trip recently, I believe. Not seen that on the telly yet, but hopefully we'll get that at some point. And I think half his paddle is on our office wall as well, with some other memorabilia from that trip. So as Rupert said, I'm Noel Hannon. I'm a principal consultant with C3A. Been with C3A for about 4.5 years now, believe it or not. I think me and you started around the same time, Rupert, actually, but more or less. And very quickly, my background, many different kind of hats over the sort of 35 plus years that I've been working. Started life as a printer, had a bit of a kind of midlife reorientate, if you like, into IT, and worked for about 10 years then as in sort of general network management, systems engineering, and then moved into security, and I've been in security for about 15 years now, I think. Bulk of the time with Capita as a consultant before coming over to C3A. So I did quite a lot of MOD work within Capita, BA Systems submarines, mainly worked on some Capita bid projects as well, which I'm not terribly proud of. A special place in hell waiting for me for a couple of those, Army recruitment, for example. But hopefully I'll get my forgiveness before then. And then at C3A, working generally directly within the MOD for about the past 3 years now. I work within DNS, so Defence Equipment and Support, for special projects, information systems and networks, based out of Abbey Wood. And I work generally with special military units. So in terms of this presentation, it is quite timely in the fact that as a security assurance coordinator within the project that I work in, I deal with some very large companies, BA Systems, for example, and some very small ones, because we use quite a lot of bespoke software, on occasion bespoke hardware, but also smaller companies that do software development and that for us. So I've got an insight into the kind of the macro scale and the micro scale with this, really. So what I'm going to cover in the next sort of 15 minutes or so. So The theme of this is working with HMG, MOD in particular, but I will cover some broader HMG concepts and terms. The challenges of that, of which there are many, and the opportunities of that, of which there are many as well. Take you very quickly through the government protected marking scheme, because it's pretty fundamental to the way that you communicate within the mod. I'm sure many people are quite familiar with this, but there are some nuances to it that perhaps you need to understand. And then really the core of it is the creation, transmission and processing of data, pardon me, with the protected marking of official sensitive, because that is really the minimum level that you need to operate at in order to communicate effectively with the Ministry of Defence. I'll talk briefly about accreditation. It's always kind of classed as a bit of a black art. It's kind of nobody really is interested in it other than accreditors and security assurance coordinators and maybe project managers. But it's the bread and butter of what I do really. I have one job basically. I maintain the accreditation of the system. Sounds simple, it isn't. And it's a very busy job, but essentially I maintain the accreditation of the system. That is my kind of primary role. And then finally, just a run through HMG scheme standards and frameworks. I've dropped into the chat a copy of the Defence Security Handbook. It comes from DefNet, which is the mod intranet. It is not protectively marked, and there are no broadcast or transmission limitations on it in any way, shape, or form. However, it would be great if you didn't post it on Facebook later. I think that's a fair punt, and say Noel gave us this. I believe it was created. It was from 2018. It doesn't appear to have been updated since then. But then, looking through it, it seems pretty up to date. That document, I believe, was created in order to give small businesses and people with an interest and a reason to communicate with the MOD or work with the MOD, to give them essentially a précis of JSP 440, which is the Defence Manual of Security and Resilience. And it does, its structure maps to that as well. So I believe that is exactly what it was there for. So as I said, I've put it on there. It's come off DefNet. It's not particularly marked. There aren't any restrictions on it, but just don't broadcast it over a kind of a wider social media if you don't mind. So working with HMG then. Yeah, many challenges and opportunities, particularly for small companies. The mod is very keen on getting small suppliers involved. It has a number of schemes to enable that we'll run through. But the core one really is Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus. I've done several of these over the years, as in applied several of these to companies over the years. They should not be onerous for a small company to achieve. It's very basic best practice. And the only real difference between Cyber Essentials and Cyber Essentials Plus is an external test. So as an example of how this could be done well and how this was very definitely done badly, if I roll back, I think to 2017 or possibly early 2018, in fact, it was definitely the year of WannaCry, which the year just escapes me at the moment. I think that was 2018. Would that be right? Somebody on the call might remember that date a bit more accurate than me. Whichever, anyway. I believe it was the same year as WannaCry hit the NHS, the WannaCry ransomware. I was at an event in London, and a gent from NHS Digital was doing a presentation about Cyber Essentials, and they had tasked a number of NHS trusts, I think initially about 100, to achieve Cyber Essentials. And they went away and did their self-assessment and all put in their self-assessment forms. And then, as a surprise, the NHS Digital decided to go and do a Cyber Essentials Plus assessment of them in order to validate that, not charging the trusts for it, but in order to validate the self-assessment. I think they stopped assessing them at trust number 75. And the reason they stopped assessing them was because not a single trust had achieved the standard for Cyber Essentials Plus. So in other words, they used it as a tick box exercise and hadn't really done the things that they said that they were going to do in the documentation and the checklist that they put forward. So the moral of the tale is do Cyber Essentials Plus, and then you can then get somebody to mark your homework. So if you're required to achieve Cyber Essentials or Cyber Essentials Plus for an MOD contract that you are interested in taking up, then I would recommend that you went for Cyber Essentials Plus anyway. It may well be that that is mandatory for mod. I must admit, off the top of my head, I'm not sure about that. It wouldn't surprise me if it was actually mandatory, but it's definitely the best thing to do because you get that external assessment.
I think, Noel, I think it is for level 2 in the DCPP.
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
Yeah.
So you can be very, companies can be very successful within HMG, and particularly within the Ministry of Defence. I was listening to a podcast yesterday about the increase in the defence budget this year, and all that money is going to be spent. So why not have a piece of it for your company? Why not and do a good job? But do prepare for investment in time and money. It is a strange beast. Even within HMG, MOD is a pretty unique beast. And depending on what you're bidding for and what it is that you want to achieve, there could be some significant investment in time and money. So you've got to look at the juice being worth the squeeze in terms of what you could make from that particular contract, what you could achieve from that contract, and also the fact that if you put in significant elements, for example, List X type facilities, but we're kind of getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, but something like List X type facilities where you upgrade your physical security of your work site in order to be able to process data in secret, then you're not just going to do that for one contract. You know what I mean? You're going to be looking at pushing your company into that domain in the future. So moving on to that, the physical security of your site is very important. You will require good physical security for processing official sensitive, but you are kind of unlikely to be externally verified for that unless you are taking part in the DCPP program, which we'll come on to. And I'm not sure anybody on the call will be looking at List N nuclear facilities at this point in time, but you never know. And then another biggie really is national security vetting of your staff. So baseline personal security standard, counter-terrorism check, and DV. Last time I checked the price tags on these, the DV I think was coming in at about £20,000. That could be a little bit out of date. I wouldn't imagine it's got any cheaper. And also the COVID effect has meant that it's taking a long time to get DV developed vetting clearance these days. And indeed, they've extended the kind of the renewal times on national security vetting as well to kind of cope with that. The MOD sponsors this process, but you pay for it, unsurprisingly. And so that's really something to bear in mind because some of your staff may not want to go through that process. They may not be British nationals, so may not be eligible for that process. And some of them, even if they are British nationals, may not pass that process. So the kind of thing that national security vetting is looking for is people who are susceptible to bribery. So all the kind of attributes that a person might have that would make them susceptible to financial bribery, then that's the sort of thing that a national security vetting check would be looking for. And I probably don't need to go through those attributes this morning. I think we're all well aware of what those might be. So it's just something to bear in mind that you may well require people to be able to pass through those vetting processes and the cost. So quick riffle through the government protected marking scheme, introduced in 2014. It took over from the previous protected marking scheme, which was 6 tiers. So unclass, protect, restricted, confidential, secret, top secret. Did I miss one out? No, I think that was it. And replaced them with 3 tiers initially. So we now have the concept of unclass vanished. So there is no unclassified data within the MOD. Everything's official, even if it's not marked as such. So for example, the Defence Security Handbook, it's not marked as official, but it's a government and an MOD generated piece of information. Therefore, it is actually official. Secret, obviously official is a majority of the information processed by HMG in the public sector. Secret is very sensitive information, which justifies more protective measures, and top secret is the most sensitive information requiring the highest level. And there is above secret, and there are levels like strap that are put on to those as well to increase protective, to increase protective measures that you may need to take above top secret. So official sensitive then isn't in that list, is it? And that's because initially those 3 layers with the sort of the chiseled in stone layers, quite quickly they realized that official sensitive would be required. And the concept at the start was that you'd have your official system, but then part of it would be official sensitive. So the way I sort of thought about this logically was that you'd have a database, for example, of your company information, but your if you like, your commercial data, your IPR, for example, would be official sensitive. So you'd have access controls, or you'd have, say, encrypted tables within your database and access controls on them, and then only a subset of your staff would have access to that. That was what it was originally designed to do. However, it became a de facto tier, really, and now represents the majority of routine HMG data, and certainly the vast majority of routine MOD data. So ModNet, which is the standard desktop system right across MOD, is official sensitive. So they did miss a trick, I think, with this initially. If you remember 2014, if you've worked in the public sector, 2014 was quite a tumultuous time in the IA community, because this happened. They also ended the class scheme, and they also CSG pretty much vanished in a puff of smoke and ended the support for the IS1, IS2, RMADS, technical risk assessment, IA portfolio methodology and documents. So if you look at any of that stuff now, even though it's still used, the last updates pretty much were 2014. So it was a pretty tumultuous time in the IA community. And people were starting to bandy the word cyber around, and referring to it as the C word and what have you. So it was this was part of the kind of the changes and the sort of upheaval that we experienced around that time, and that still hasn't fully settled down, to be perfectly honest, in terms of the scheme that replaced class, although they tell us it doesn't. And the fact that official sensitive has still never really been formally recognised as one of the tiers here, even though it is de facto. So in essence, in order to work with HMG and particularly MOD, you must be able to routinely communicate official sensitive. So let's see how. Easiest way: get access to ModNet. Easier said than done. If you're going to work on an MOD site, they may give you a ModNet account and sit you at a ModNet laptop or PC, which is great, and that's obviously the easiest way of doing it. You then get full access across ModNet, the DefNet, the Defence Intranet, and you'll get access to all the JSPs and DINs and DIPENs and all the other kind of mod acronym documentation that you would need to operate in that environment. Outside of that, if you want to get access for your company and your company site and your people to official sensitive routes, then there are a number of methods to do so, which come with different price tags attached. Access to the assured land intranet, that was previously previously the restricted land intranet, the intranet, the RLI is now the ALI. That is quite expensive. To do that, you need an ALI SDP, service delivery point, which is essentially an ALI router on your site. You would need to be at an appropriate DCPP level, so that's Defence Cyber Protection Partnership, which it involves quite. It's a big step beyond cyber essentials in terms of physical security of your site, the build of your PCs and laptops that would access this, the location of that ALI SDP, and various other attributes that you would need to spin up in order to achieve an appropriate DCPP level for the protected marking that you're processing. C3A has tier 2, is it, Rupert? I know
no, we're up to DCPP high now.
DCP high, yeah. So we've got we can process data at secret essentially, which is very useful. It proved massively useful at the start of lockdown when we weren't able to get into or regularly get into MOD sites where we were normally working on secret networks at that point. So massively useful for us. You can rent laptops from Sopra Steria. It's called the Secure Communities Working. I believe they're not as fully featured as a ModNet laptop, so you get a kind of cut down access, pretty much just email and some file share, I think, on those. They come with a reasonable price tag. I think the laptops are about £1,500, and then there is somewhere between £600 and £1,000 a year sort of service charge on those. Once you've got either or of those, then you would, in all likelihood, be issued with it, unless you're on a ModNet account. You get what we call r.mil addresses. They have a slightly different naming convention now on ModNet. They're prefixed with SWCSC, but they're essentially a rooted account, if you like, that enables us to send official sensitive. So if we're dealing with a company with a .com address, for example, we would not assume that they had that we could send that address official sensitive information. Some of those addresses are once they're routed from the ALI, they do route to accredited official sensitive systems on the company side, but you have to check that with the company first. If it's an r.mil address or an industry-sc prefix one, then that's a pretty safe bet. But it's always good to check first. It's always good to have that comms check of sending an email to that organisation and checking that they've got the correct route for an official sensitive document. And as I said, large domains may have a visible route into that. Other government departments, there is a list on DefNet of all basically anything with the .gov, almost anything with the .gov.uk. So all the local authorities have that level of routing inside. We can also route to the NHS. It's not as straightforward as that, I don't think, but there is a lot of link up between Defence Medical Services and the NHS, so they can route information like that as well, and NATO and US addresses too. And as I mentioned before, if you're doing DCPP, you have to work to build standards for user access devices, so laptops and desktops, and have appropriate data at rest encryption involved. So that could be, if you're working at secret, that could be via site clipped hard drives, which are very expensive, in excess of £1,000. You can only order them through the MOD. But official sensitive BitLocker is routinely used for that. Appropriate data in transit encryption, so things like Cisco AnyConnect is the sort of standard method of that. And then the user access devices themselves hardened to the current NCSC standards. So a little bit about accreditation. It's required.
Sorry to jump in. Could
Sorry,
you?
Robin.
I'm just conscious of time. So it's really good stuff. Steve and Charlotte are obviously lined up. If you could rattle through the last couple of bits.
I will do. Yeah. So accreditation is my key job. It's required for all systems processing HMG and MOD information. You would require it for your system if you're going to process mod data. Administrated by the Cyber Defence and Resilience, formerly DIAS. Administrated through a software tool called DART. The current process hasn't changed dramatically in the last few years, apart from DART as a flowchart tool. Future process, maybe that's another presentation. I've been working on some variants of this process, which I've been using in my day job, which may be of interest. But we're trying to make it a lot more pragmatic and a lot more streamlined. So last slide. There's some scheme standards and frameworks to take on board. The JSP stuff you won't find publicly. Well, at least you may do on places like WikiLeaks, but you won't find up-to-date copies publicly. So you need to be inside the mod before you get access to these. The Defence Security Handbook I've provided. If you want to circulate these slides so that you've got this to sort of refer to, that's fine, Robin. If you want to do that, I did send them to you this morning. And there's a little piece around the DCPP, of which C3A is a member of, and as a DCPP high level, in order for us to process secret. And that was a very quick rattle through.
Fabulous, thanks, Noel. That was really, really helpful. Having trod that course in the business I was with last time, it's yeah, you've got to be, it's another step forward. So to have that sort of advice and guidance and an awareness before you go on that journey is really, really helpful. And it might be that we pull you in for another session or another sort of workshop bit.
Yeah, not a problem. If you want me to do one around accreditation, that could be useful.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking of have been the Southwest Regional Defence and Security Cluster have sort of reached out and are establishing a special interest group on security and resilience. So it might be that there's a sort of joint piece there where we can start to share some useful information. So I'll be in touch. Thanks ever so much, Noel. Brilliant stuff.
No problem. I'll drop off now, Robin, if that's okay. And
yeah, fabulous. Thanks, Noel. Thank you, Rupert.
Jürgen, good to see you again. Sorry, I think I blanked you earlier. And
I think you might have gone.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Super job. Thanks, Noel. Steve and Gareth, got you down as next.
Sure. Yeah.
Slides, share your screen. And,
yeah, I have, if that's okay, Robin.
Yeah, absolutely fine.
First of all, just hi everyone. My name's Steve Cornton. I'm assistant principal at South Devon College. Just like to thank you for the opportunity to share some of the work we've been doing a little bit more widely. I'm just going to lead off with a little bit around the our development of a high-tech and digital centre, and then my colleague Gareth's just going to come in with some of the activity that kind of underpins that as well. So I'm going to share screen if that's okay. If you can see that, is that okay, Robin? Okay, so again, thank you for the opportunity. This is mainly focusing around the developments of the high-tech and digital centre at South Devon College. I just need to start off with just giving you a little bit of a background of what the college is, who the college is. That'll keep my principal happy, that I'm sharing that more widely as well. But we are a college of fundamentally of further education, and we've got around 10,000 students on roll at any one time, and they are a broad range of provisions, right from young people through apprenticeships up to higher education, and we deliver everything from GCSE right the way through to level 6 degree level qualifications. So very broad range and a very a broad range of offer within that as well. We are inclusive of all age ranges. We are based in Paynton, that is where our main site is, where our Vantage Point campus is, which is where the High Tech and Digital Centre is. But we do have campuses in Torquay, Newton Abbot, and on the River Dart, where we're currently building our new South Devon Marine Academy. So hopefully that just gives you a bit of a background of who we are and where we are. What we were going to share with you today really is how we have developed our curriculum and how we have used employers to influence what that looks like and how that is structured. I came into post about 6 years ago now with the directive to develop an employer responsive curriculum, particularly around the areas of technology. So we developed what we now call the high tech and digital curriculum. Now that fundamentally follows an engineering life cycle of taking a product from design all the way through to manufacturing. So inside of that, the curriculum covers everything from art through to, sorry about that, from art all the way through to manufacturing. And in the middle of that is all the digital media, programming and cyber type activities as well. So there's quite an extensive curriculum there. We started off really by trying to establish what that curriculum should look like and what is the gap, because I think we're all aware that with digital transformation and the development of technology, it does leave and does give us quite a skills gap in a number of areas. So we spent a great deal of time identifying what that was. We looked at the workforce. We spent a lot of time working with our employers, looking at the age ranges they employed and looking at the different needs of those employers. And I mean, this is quite an old slide now, but it does give you kind of, when you talk about being inclusive of all ages, which many employers are, they are employing lots of different generations. And with that comes lots of different styles in the way they learn and the way they develop. And when we chuck the young people into that as well, of what we now call the Generation C, where they learn in a very different way into which I learn. And it really does open your eyes when you start really digging into the best ways in which they learn, the ways that they want to learn. And, you know, it is very different. Whereas if you'd asked me what type of learning environment would be best for me, I would probably say it's got to be warm, it's got to be safe, it's got to be quiet, perhaps, as well, so that I can learn. You know, you ask a young person, the first thing they say, well, I've got to be able to connect to the Wi-Fi. That's my first thing. I've got to be able to communicate to people. I've got to be able to access social media, etc. And they might ask about chicken nuggets as well in there, but it's a very different age range to look at. You know, but there are a lot of positives with that. They are very creative. They do like short, sharp learning sessions. You know, they're very casual about learning. And we do live in an age where, as teachers and lecturers, my staff, you know, they are constantly checked by YouTube, and that's instantaneous in the classroom. So, you know, being for lecturers and staff to be up to date with the latest industry specs is also really important. The technology, I think you guys are all fully aware of the impact of technology. We have to consider this as well, or the evolution, the transformation, the disruption that this causes in the way we work in our workplaces as well. So we bundle that all into the curriculum as well. But working with the employers is an essential part of that. You know, we realised in education a long time ago, we can't do this on our own. We can't do it in isolation or with a silo mentality. We need to get out there and talk to employers. We spend a lot of time working with employers on what their programs are. We never tell them what we can do. When an employer comes to us and says, you know, we need some help, we need some support with our workforce development, we never tell them what we can do. We ask them what it is they need. We send staff out. We in manufacturing, for example, our staff go onto the production line and they look at what the industry is doing, so that we can really feed up to date activity, efficiencies, productivity into the training. So it is real, not only for our young people, but also for our people that are reskilling. The industry support us. We obviously have a collaborative approach and co-design approach to the development of the curriculum, but we also have a co-design approach to delivery as well, where industry deliver on the courses, we deliver in the workplace, even down to the point that they help us with our interviewing techniques, our sector awareness for our students, and everything that goes with that. You can see there from that, this is just an example of the wide breadth of industry that we work with at the college, national and international. You know, we have contracts with South Korea. We have do a lot of training for ABB. Myself and Gareth for Jiu-Jitsu education ambassadors as well. So we have quite a national reach, as well as our focus, which is clearly our region first and foremost. Once we've done all that and we've put it all into a pot and we understand what employers want, we kind of got to a stage where we categorized our learning into three kind of phases. Kind of the essential training. I always kind of say this is where you kind of learn how to switch it on, and then the general training is then using it effectively, and then the advanced is kind of where you get into your kind of more in depth for this group into your cyber activity, etc., or your programming and such like. Of course, with young people, what we find is they don't need the essential training anymore. They're pretty much born tuned into digital, so they jump quite quickly into the middle ground and move quite fastly to the advanced and specialist, and some of them are already there. You know, being born with technology, you know, not being too far from their phone if it's ever separate from their being at this stage. So that falls into our curriculum map that we have, and this is a very top level general map of what we deliver in the different categories. There are no routes through this because we spend a lot of time on assessing the individual's needs when they join the program, and that could be an individual joining us who's unemployed, or a young person that's coming, you know, looking for an opportunity, or it could be employers that are looking to upskill their workforce. We work with them, find out what their starting point is, and then feed them into the curriculum at the relevant point. So it's quite interesting. There is no line of progression through it, because where you join will be your starting point, and then we progressed forward from there. moving quite quickly on here. So we got the curriculum into place. Just to give you some kind of idea, when I started, our curriculum income was around the 3 million mark. The curriculum income now is just under 10 million. So it does show how we have evolved the curriculum. And most of that is because of the employer engagement and the activity we do with employers. But the reward for doing that really was to develop a centre where we could house the curriculum, and hence that's where the High Tech and Digital Centre came from. It came out of the development of the curriculum. So when we started off on the journey, we were very clear with our services. We didn't want to put a building up, get to the building, open the doors and go, well, okay, great building, but what are we going to do in it? Actually, we knew 2 years before we opened, we could fill the building with our current student cohort. So that was quite exciting for us. And you can see the picture behind me of what it looks like in the dark. It's not dark here at the moment. We opened in 2019 with our first cohorts joining us, and we've had 2 years of further disruption caused by COVID. Some of the design that went into the building actually played into our hands very nicely during the COVID academic, from taking a positive from a very negative part in our journey. We have a lot of VDI external access equipment so that we can share, well, the original idea was that we could share the software applications that we've got and the equipment, etc. We could share it around the building. But obviously with COVID, we haven't stopped delivery at all during this period. We've technically been flat out ever since this time last year. But the systems that we put into the building allowed us to deliver externally to our students. So those students that might have been disadvantaged by COVID by not having the technology at home were able to have a basic unit, some of which we supply to them, but a basic unit that allowed them to access the capacity they needed to run programs, such as CAD and other things as well. So that was an unintentional success of COVID. Just to go through this bit as well, because I do need to give a big shout out to our sponsors that helped us build the building. It's a 17 million pound project in all. As I said, it's now up and running and open, and it's continuously being developed and added to. We did take quite a lot of money from our reserves at the college, and that was done with our governor's support, who recognised the need for our curriculum development. The Heart of the Southwest joined in on that as well with a very hearty contribution towards the development. We also had other influences from the HEFCE is no longer with us, but it was quite an interesting one at the time because they sponsored £1 million, which was the first, which is the largest sponsorship to a college of further education at that time, because they are predominantly higher education based. There is some European funding in there as well, because we do have an innovation centre as part of the building. And then the rest of it was basically working with employers and being able to sell the dream and the vision at an early stage that engaged them. So we have quite large contracts with ABB, Princess Yachts. They're examples where we deliver their training on site, and they sponsor rooms and equipment. And also do their own training in the building, train our staff so that our staff are well up to speed with the latest technology developments. So we have a great facility now to deliver all of these programs in. It is very flexible. It is very agile. It's been designed around that kind of engineering life cycle. We mix our students up. You may be on a digital media course, for example, but you will work with art students and you will work with engineers to see how the whole product design, taking the idea from conception through to manufacturing, works. It gives them that really rounded experience. We do add professional training to that, kind of the marketing, accountancy and everything as well that goes with that, really to try and develop rounded students that leave our establishment are ready to go back into industry, whether that be retraining adults or young people. And that is predominantly what driven by what employers have told us. And that continues. We don't stop there. We haven't stopped. We still have many different ways in which we collaborate with our employers and work. But been a very tough couple of years, but our students are now back in the building and using the facility. They're hungry to learn, they're hungry to develop their skills and move forward. And we are now working with employers on our next phase of hopefully moving them from our further education students, moving them on to apprenticeships in September. So that was a real whistle stop rattle through. I'm sorry if I'm going at 300 miles an hour. I'm happy to take any questions, but I would just like to hand over to Gareth, who's going to take us through some of the curriculum that underpins that activity.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Gareth. Gareth, we're a bit tight on time, so if you could, whiz through, that would be brilliant. Thank you.
No morning, everybody. Thank you for the invite this morning. My name's Gareth Day. I'm the head of digital, creative, and design here at the college. So as Steve said, we have a brand new kind of facility, which is really been an enabler for us to kind of do a lot of the things that we do as a college and embed digital skills and specifically cyber security into our programs. So a couple of examples of who we've worked with and how we've helped to inform our curriculum design. So one of which is Fujitsu. So hopefully most people will have probably heard of Fujitsu. They're a large Japanese company who are into most things. You'll probably find Fujitsu equipment in any facility, whether it's air conditioning units to computing to servers and things like that. So Steve and I, as Steve said, we're both education ambassadors, and the really good thing about that is it allows us to work with Fujitsu on development of training programs. So it opens us up to a wide kind of network of other providers within the whole of the UK to develop bespoke training programs in things like robotics, cybersecurity, data analytics, IoT, all of the kind of key fourth industrial revolution kind of technologies which play into, which have a part in what we do. And Steve and I were fortunate enough to be leads on the data analytics and the IoT development. So the fantastic thing about all of those is all that experience, all that work that we have working with those employers comes back into our curriculum. So we know that when we're putting on curriculum and we're developing and designing, all of those things are relevant, and they're relevant to what we should be doing, what we should be delivering, and giving the skills for what our young people and more importantly our kind of employers require in order to maintain currency. Another example is Spirent, who are a kind of global positioning specialist and consultant, who also happen to have an office in Paignton. And we do a lot of development work with them to do bespoke training for their kind of workforce. But again, in the same way, everything we do, the requirements that we see Spirent are needing, we can bring those straight back into our digital curriculum and ensure that everything we're doing not only meets the needs of the employers, but also meets the needs of our learners as well. Thanks, Steve. If you wouldn't mind moving on to the next one. Again, another kind of partnership and real kind of benefit that we have is our partnership with the EC Council. So we partner with those and offer some of their cybersecurity specialist training. So the main one really being the Certified Secure Computer User. So this one is really aimed at end users, and as we were saying, as Noel was saying earlier, around the threats to the NHS with things like WannaCry back in 2017. It's so important that every user of computer systems is aware of cyber security. It's not just a job for the IT department. It's not just a job for the techies. It's everybody's, and that's what this program does. So what we do with our apprenticeship programs, Steve, if you wouldn't mind just moving on, probably skip on 2 slides here, I think, if we're pushing on time. What we do with all our apprenticeships and T-level programs is any apprentices who start within the college, and not just within my areas, which are the technical ones, we offer them as a value-added incentive for their programs, the opportunity to undertake the CSCU program is as a value added, so no cost to the organisation. which makes sure that any of their apprentices that are coming on are going to bring back that extra value of the cybersecurity knowledge, top level knowledge about basics of protection back to their organisations. So again, we're implementing the T-levels from September. So we have our digital production and design, digital support services, all which are very much industry facing. If we could skip on another one, Steve. And also our apprenticeships as well. So these are all reflective of what our local employers require. So software developers, network technicians, data analysts, digital marketers, at both level 3 and 4. And again, we work so very closely with people like the NHS to make sure that the provision that we're putting on reflects what they need in order to reflect their workforce, but also adding to it that value added of cybersecurity. So everybody who comes onto one of our programs will also get that value added cybersecurity overview. And then if we jump on to the next and final one, thanks, Steve. And I think really the benefit of doing that, of working so closely with employers, has allowed us to currently work with the Department for Education to ensure that our computing degree meets the current standard for the higher technical qualifications. So these are brand new. We're in consultation in the process now, but this is essentially a government kite mark, a stamp of quality to say that our programs that we're delivering are meeting, the basics to cover all of the occupational standards required for the apprenticeships in things like networking and cyber and data. And it's a real kind of added confidence boost for our kind of employers and our students who we work with, that our programs and our quality is up to that standard. So that was a very quick kind of overview in addition to what Steve's already kind of discussed with, but happy to take any questions, or my obviously my contact details are in this. If anybody's interested, then feel free to drop me a line and ask any further questions.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Gareth, and thank you, Steve. It becomes increasingly interesting to us in terms of what the region is doing from a skills perspective. We've been looking at that in the context of the potential to secure some funding through the UK Cyber Cluster Council. Yeah. So just working on that one at the moment. I've got a presentation from Mike Halliday next month to expand that a little bit once that clarifies. And perfectly cues, I think, Charlotte from the Digital Skills Partnership to talk about the Digital Skills Partnership. So a perfect segue. There we are.
Hello everyone. I will just pop my screen up. But yeah, thank you for letting me join this morning. I'm not sure why I've not been here before. And
I don't know either, Charlotte.
And actually, the Digital Skills Partnership is funded by DCMS, and it came out of a DCMS introduction that we should kind of make contact with our local cybersecurity cluster group. So that's how it's come to be. So I thought I'd kind of start from the beginning and pretend that none of you know anything about the Digital Skills Partnership. Can I just check you can see my slides there before I move on? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, great. So Digital Skills Partnership, as I said, we're funded by the Department for Digital, Culture, Media and Sport. We were launched at the very end of 2018. So we've got about 3 years under our belt of kind of finding our feet, connecting with stakeholders, and really kind of doing a bit of a survey about what is the position, the state of the universe, if you like, of digital skills across the LEP region. So when I'm talking about the LEP region, in this context here, I'm talking about Heart of the Southwest LEP, so Devon, Somerset, Plymouth and Torbay. We did a very thorough piece of digital skills mapping and gapping exercise, and that enabled us to put together an action plan to really focus on where our cold spots were and help kind of develop the digital skills, whether it be of businesses, whether it be of individuals in those particular cold spots. It's quite a broad umbrella that so one, it's obviously very big geography. I think we're the second largest LEP geography in the UK. And obviously under the umbrella of digital skills is everything, right from basic digital skills right through to advanced technical skills. And then within that, you kind of fall into niche specialisms, whether it's sector agnostic or dropped specifically into the tech sector. So it's quite a large umbrella that the Digital Skills Partnership covers, and really our role is to work with stakeholders, so private sector, local authority and the third sector, to drive up the level of digital skills across all those people. My dog is just going to bark at that door. I'm just going to let her out, otherwise she's going to continue. Just bear with me 1 minute.
The joys of home working. There we are.
Very unprofessional. Otherwise she'd have continued to bark. So that's our role. We're here to kind of work with stakeholders to drive up the level of digital skills in region. Just to kind of point out that there are this map actually shows 6 digital skills partnerships. There's actually now 7. Leeds have since joined, and they've not yet made it onto the map. But you can kind of see geographically where we are spread across the UK, and we're really lucky in that our partners in Cornwall also have digital skills partnerships, so we work really closely with them. So we've got quite a good coverage across the geography of certainly this group here as well. Should also just say a couple of members of the Digital Skills Partnership on the call, so Steve and Gareth, Steve and Maridas. We're very well kind of connected in with, certainly with our FE and HE partners alongside the private sector. In terms of how we're organised, so this is quite a new evolution really. We looked at who we're here to serve, who we're here to benefit, and we broke those down into 4 very broad personas. So young people who are developing their digital capability, and that group's called Developing in Digital professionals, so kind of super niche, talented. How do we keep those people in region? How do we attract more of those skill sets into our region as well? And then also people in the community, so that's our digital citizen group. And we have 4 across the partnership, so I think we've got 76 members currently in the Digital Skills Partnership, and people have kind of allocated which group that they most align to, and they work with the chair of that group to kind of advance initiatives that are particularly of benefit to one of these 4 groups. As I say, that's been a kind of a new initiative in terms of looking at how we work this year. Very kind of obvious thing to say, but so the LEP has specifically a skills website, which is called the Skills Launchpad. Within that website, we have a dedicated landing page, and we keep that page up to date with lots of free resources about where you can kind of go to advance your digital skill set, digital skills news. You can sign up to the newsletter, webinars. So that is kind of the place I direct you to if you kind of wanted to find out about how you could be either supporting your workforce or events to attend. And I'll drop the link to that in the chat when I've finished speaking. Just kind of going to put it into a little bit of kind of tangible outputs of what we've done. So these kind of figures are kind of talk about activity that we've helped foster over the last 18 months. So 800 businesses were helped through a program called Bounce Back Digital during the period of about May to October last year. And this came out of obviously kind of not post pandemic, but in the kind of immediate aftermath of pandemic being in situ. We were hearing through the Growth Hub that a lot of businesses who had relied on face-to-face transactions were really struggling with that move onto online kind of ways of connecting with their customers. So we put together with about 5 different delivery partners a series of over 50 webinars, all based around small group work activity that help businesses kind of move online, and 800 businesses that use those sessions during the months of May to October. Second one down is a program called Digital Momentum, and South Devon College were part of this delivery. And this goes back to that mapping and gapping evidence we talked about, and we identified through that there was a real imbalance going on in our digital workforce. So generally women were not represented, but also residents from our deprived wards. So we ran a program which helped those people that we'd identified move into the digital sector. And 194 people went through that program. Of those, about 45 did a CompTIA cybersecurity course with Blue Screen IT in Plymouth. So that was that program. Generally, we work with both in region, as I say, so work with our colleges and universities, but we also work with national providers. So we brought Lloyds Bank into the region, and they delivered their digital know-how sessions, and over 700 businesses have used those. More recently, in the last year, we were finalists in a Nesta project, which was looking at really innovative projects that could help people who were in roles that were possibly going to be affected by automation. And this was a project as well with South Devon College. And so we worked with 50 mature workers who, as I say, we'd identified were possibly in at-risk sectors, so possibly working in retail or hospitality, and we helped them consider through a tool called Skill Lab how they could transition into more resilient modes of work. That was that one. 750, so we currently have, well, more than 750, but 750, let's say, learners on our digital and technical boot camps, and I've got a few slides on that coming up, so I won't go into that one in too much detail. And then 1,000 there, so that's how many young people we've reached, either through school assemblies or through kind of hands-on digital events in schools. And it's about kind of keeping our eye that we need to keep driving that pipeline of young talent that's going to come in and be the kind of future workforce. So that's just a little bit of how we kind of turn the words into action. So as I say, Train for Tomorrow. So this was the digital, and well, these are the digital and technical boot camps that are currently running. This is kind of a huge project for us, really. So we were successful in securing £2.2 million of Department for Education funding to work with 10 different delivery partners. Again, South Devon College are one of our delivery partners on this programme. And what we had to do in our bid is we had to look at labour market intelligence data and identify where our skills shortage vacancies were in the region. So where we had digital technical vacancies that were staying open for a long time, not being filled, and where there were a high number of those. So looking at that data, we identified that we had gaps in software developers, cybersecurity, data analysts, digital marketing, also technical skills, welding, photonics, renewables, microelectronics. And we asked delivery partners to design, in conjunction with employers, 12-week intensive training courses that would allow people either in those sectors to advance, or people that hadn't got that skills to pivot into those sectors. So these boot camps launched in January. We've just had, I think, 712 learners have completed in March. We've got currently another 150 on programme. And then we've bid for follow-on funding, for Wave 2 funding, which will see the programme be able to run July from this year through to 2022. Just going on the next slide, I've got a 1-minute video about Train for Tomorrow, which hopefully gets you all excited and puts it in much better words than I've just been through. So hopefully the sound will play, but if someone raises a hand if sound isn't playing, and I'll look at a setting and to make that happen. Can you hear that? So hopefully that's kind of really brought it home to you what Train for Tomorrow is all about. And we were only one of 6 areas nationally that secured that money. So it's been a real kind of win for our area and the development of skills to support the private sector. This slide here, kind of, when you're involved in project management, it comes very much about getting the learners onto programme, the successful outcomes of them kind of seeing that programme through to completion. But I've just put a couple of quotes here from some of our learners, and I think it's really important to remember why we actually are doing this. So it is really about helping people move into sectors that we know are going to be growth sectors, and move into kind of more resilient and higher paid roles of work. So, you know, that top quote, Peter, who lost his job last year as a head chef, never dreamt he'd be able to kind of retrain into cybersecurity, and this program's enabled him to do that. Yeah, so that's why we do what we do. And just to kind of a final bit of an ask on the Train for Tomorrow, really, in that so it's not just about designing a program in conjunction with employers to help people progress into these roles. We actually do want to connect people with jobs at the end of it. So coming up this month, we're having a go at running a virtual jobs fair. It's the first time we've done anything like this in the region. So all our learners coming off programme are going to be there in attendance, and we're asking employers if they've got open vacancies, or if they know they're going to be having vacancies kind of opening up in the next couple of months, to come along and attend that session. It is a day-long event. It's going to be a bit like hanging around in breakout rooms. So as an employer, what you do is you host your own breakout room. On the 15 minutes throughout the day, people can pop into those rooms and talk to you about your organisation, and you can find out a bit about them and the learning that they've just come through and their previous experience. So if anyone's interested in attending that event, we'd love to have you there. It's free. Just got a few more slides. So this is now flipping and kind of going back to that piece about how do we grow the pipeline of young people coming through that are interested in, well, firstly aware that they're going to need digital skills in any job that they go into in the future, but also how do we also grow the number of young people that are interested specifically in moving into tech roles. And, you know, there's some quite kind of stark facts there. Actually, in schools, the number of computing hours has dropped. The number of pupils taking computer science has dropped. So we do really need to kind of start making a step change. Otherwise, we've got a kind of a ticking time bomb that's going to go off. So we've got a couple of programs running. One is called Raising Digital Engagement at Key Stage 3. So we're working with, again, it's a project funded by DCMS. It's a pilot. It's the only one happening in the country. And we're working with 15 secondary schools, specifically to work with year 7s and year 8s, to bring fun, connect fun and digital into their kind of daily school day into their school day. So that, you know, whether it's kind of through code clubs, whether it's through allowing them to interview people in the tech sector to find out about their jobs, whether it's about connecting STEM ambassadors with their teachers so that they can do more of that extracurricular digital activity. We've got that program running at the moment, and we'll be kind of feeding those inputs back into DCMS, hopefully for a national rollout. Just a couple of other things. So Cyber First Schools, they're in Gloucester. There's a couple of those in Gloucestershire at the moment. So we're kind of promoting that across our school network to say this is an opportunity that you could look at, and you'll be fully supported by the Cyber First team if you wanted to think about becoming a Cyber First school. We promote things like the Cyber Challenge for the Year 8s. And then just kind of more generally, we're feeding information through to our schools. So about this Big Bang Digital coming up in June, but also the Southwest STEM Fest. Lastly there, this is particularly aimed at kind of year 13. So we're thinking about going on to university. We'll kind of promote where there are bursaries available. So this last one is about particularly aimed at female pupils from low-income households, and that Amazon run this scheme where they will give you a 5,000 bursary to kind of put you through, help you support your time through university. So that's how we try and work with our young people. And I should say, Steve actually chairs our young people group in the Digital Skills Partnership. So you can come and talk to either of us about any of these projects. So 2 slides left. One asks of you as a group, if you have got open vacancies, we'd love to kind of see you at our Train for Tomorrow Jobs Fair on the 26th of May. Drop me a line and I can get you booked into that. The Raising Digital Engagement project I just talked about. So I was on that steering group for that call last night, and we actually have, so there's both the Cyber First team and the famous Patrick B from NCS sits on that steering group, and we were just saying we want to set up 6 kind of interactive sector spotlight talks for both pupils and their parents. So if any of you want to come and talk about your job and what you do in cybersecurity, I'd love to. I'm looking for one person basically that's quite engaging to kind of do that half-an-hour session, so you can get involved in the Radiant Digital Engagement Project. Our Digital Skills Partnership, they are now open meetings, so we meet quarterly. Our next one's on the 17th of June. So if you want to kind of come and find out about more broadly what we do, you'd be very welcome. And then finally, I think, again, kind of coming back full circle about how I kind of found out that I wasn't connected in with you enough as a group. And that came through a meeting with Rebecca Bryant, who is Head of Regional Engagement for the Cyber Sector team at DCMS. And she was talking about the future Cybersecurity Skills Fund. And I think we've definitely got insights that we can take from programmes that we've run with DCMS to help put the Southwest Cyber Cluster in a good place to bid into that fund. Because there's some asks, I thought I'd just end with a couple of give backs to the group. Just 2 programs just very quickly to make you aware of that might help your businesses. So the first one, Digital Boost, which is aimed at micros and SMEs. It came out of the COVID pandemic, and large organisations like so NatWest, IBM, Amazon have volunteered their staff time to help micros and SMEs who have a particular digital ask. So basically you can go on there and say, I need help setting up a digital marketing strategy or running my first Facebook campaign, whatever it is that is your kind of particular pain point, and you will be matched with a volunteer from a corporation who has specific expertise in that area, and they'll kind of act as your mentor, take you through that on a one-to-one basis. A little bit of a call out. There is nothing to do with cybersecurity support offered through the Digital Boost platform. So potentially there could be an avenue there that we should be exploring. And what happens is the matching service is quite clever, and it matches a business to the volunteer that's with the closest geographical proximity. So although you are kind of volunteering and giving your time for free, it is an opportunity to raise awareness of your organisation and start building that relationship with that local business. So that's Digital Boost. And then just finally, just to say Tech Nation. So this is kind of more aimed at growth businesses who are looking to scale. They've just released 6 new funds, which are all about programs, which are all about helping that growth and scaling up. That's it. I had no idea how long I've been. Well, I've been ages.
Yeah, but where were you?
Coming up though.
Yeah. We let it go, Charlotte. That's fine. And thank you for that. That was really interesting just to see, and we're starting to see, you know, as I said before your slot, in the context of the UK Cyber Cluster Collaboration and the DCMS interest in putting funding into the cluster, into the region. Yeah, the skills piece is certainly really quite interesting, and we've got some thoughts and ideas of what that might look like. So, you know, it's the elephant in everybody's room, is, I think, really, isn't it? It's the availability of skills both now and into the future as this thing grows. And I think if the region is going to plays to its strengths, yeah, more needs to be done, so that the tighter these initiatives can be locked in, the better, and the cluster is in a good place to be able to help facilitate some of that activity.
Yeah, I think collaboration is key, and kind of drawing on, you know, what we've learned so far. You know, we've clearly had some effective delivery of cyber skills courses, so yeah, it'd be great to work together.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's a complicated landscape, and I think there is a good answer in there, and by virtue of the fact that, you know, the cluster isn't doesn't have a commercial focus, you know, it's in quite a good place to bring, you know, educators and businesses and individuals together. I'm very keen to do that. There'll be more of that next month. We've got Andrew talking from Salute My Jobs about the platform he's putting together for, you know, signposting cyber skills and bringing that particularly the industry ecosystem together with those that are, you know, well qualified to be able to you know, to look at the development of their cyber careers. And Mike Halliday will talk a little bit about what he's done in other regions, which under the interest of Patrick at NCSC, started to explore what initiative we could put in alongside the colleges. We've already chatted to Steve on this front, to look at where the cluster can take a more active role and prominent role in coordinating some of that activity. So more of that next month. I'm just a little conscious of time, but has anybody got any sort of questions or observations to raise?
Charlotte, hi, it's Andrew here. I may have missed something in your presentation, in which case my apologies. Is this focused purely on young people? We focus on helping people from the armed forces into employment in digital and cyber roles. In fact, I used to work for IBM. So is the funding that I've seen, perhaps other than this initiative, has all been targeted to young people? Is this going to focus on career changes as well? And if so, perhaps we could have a chat.
Yeah, sorry, I've probably not explained that very well then. So we have different initiatives running for different kind of groups, if you like, different audiences. So the Raising Digital Engagement focused on young people. Train for Tomorrow is focused on adults aged 19 plus, and very much focused on pivoting. And actually, so the CompTIA cybersecurity and IT practitioner courses that Blue Screen have run for us, they have really good connections at working with people coming out of the MOD and retraining into kind of more general jobs. So yeah, we can follow up that conversation because they've got quite a good track record there.
Okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you, Andrew. Anybody else?
Robin, can I just add to that
yes,
a little
Steve.
bit as well? Because
sure.
I think it's a good question, Andrew. I think at the moment there's an awful lot of incentives coming from government around in funding opportunities for us to collaborate with employers, and that the big word is that in any of those bids is collaboration, and it is predominantly about getting people into work. So I think it's a case of, watch the space. It is developing very quickly. But if you've got any questions or comments, I mean, you can come and speak to us, not a problem, or speak to one of your providers in your area. I dare say there are some opportunities arising.
I don't want to get into a long conversation now for the conscious of time. We're working on a programme in Scotland funded by Skills Development Scotland to reskill veterans for cyber security. And that's exceeded all expectations, and there's some quite good models and learnings from that, but whether it fits this particular model, I'd love to have that conversation with you and see if
definitely on that. More than happy. Yeah,
great. Our work here is done. It's all about the connections. It really is.
Exactly.
Great stuff. Without any other questions, I was just conscious of just giving a quick update back from the National Cluster meeting that was held this week. Just the headlines. There is a new innovation acceleration program that appears to be replacing the cyber bootcamp thing. The ITTs are out through DCMS at the moment, so that will be rejuvenated, and the other notable element, they have placed regional DCMS representatives out into the country, and fortunately the Southwest has been allocated one. We don't know who it is yet, but that will be up and running by the middle of next month. So as and when that's the case, with this pushing the interface between DCMS, cyber, and the regions, then we'll invite them in probably in July to just talk about what that looks like. From the Cabinet Office, the major thrust there was around the new National Cybersecurity Strategy, which is being worked on now and is due to be released later this year. And anything else of note? So I've got a discussion with Sarah, Patrick B's boss, Sarah S., who's a Cyber First Schools lead at NCSC. It was already scheduled actually, but she sort of presented around what they call the Regional Cybersecurity Education Ecosystem Maturity Model. Snappy title. I'll come up with an acronym for that, as I did for the UK cyber cluster collaboration, which seems to have stuck. So we'll know more on that. But again, thinking around what the cluster can do in terms of maybe, being the focal point for a regional pilot project for whatever they get up to. And I think that was largely it. There was one signpost actually from Cynam. They did the Cheltenham Cyber Cluster do put on some really quite good events, and the next one is on June the 10th, very particularly focused on smart cities. So if anybody has an interest in that, of course, you're welcome to look it up under Cynam and subscribe for it. So it was June the 10th, smart cities. So that was it from I think that was it from a national perspective. No particular updates from either the Cyber Resilience Centre. The next advisory board meeting is coming up, so there's at which point they'll start to talk through some of the initiatives they're looking at. Their membership is just seems to have plateaued a little bit around the 200 mark, so they're targeting to get to 500 members. So more work to do there, but I'll bring back to the table if there's any opportunities for involvement and engagement there. And the Southwest Regional Defence and Security Cluster, as I mentioned before, that's sort of gaining a little bit more momentum now. There's about 70 or 80 odd members, so there will be opportunities for some I guess some joint work in there, particularly in the context of Rupert and Noel's presentation on doing business with the MOD. There is a significant opportunity in that. The heart of the Southwest Local Industrial Strategy, was attempting to place some prominence on the defence sector by virtue of its size. So we might see that starts to gain a little bit more momentum as things progress. So that maybe tie a lot of this innovation skills and business protection thing together, with one particularly big market in this region that we could all take advantage of. So so that was it. That was it from me. Hopefully I wasn't on mute. No, there we are. No, perfect. Anything from anybody else? Jeff, any nothing from event updates really, other than the activity to slice and splice the Secure Southwest event and release it out in consumable chunks.
Yeah, that's what we're working on at the moment. So for those that attended the Secure Southwest event or didn't, we recorded the whole thing. We're going to slice it into small sections and progressively release them over time over the next few months on YouTube, so that people can continue to consume the content as we prepare for next year's Secure Southwest 15.
Yes, we need to start to think about that, Jeff, don't we? Maybe,
we do.
Maybe a month or two. Yeah, I don't know.
I'll think about that.
Yeah. Great. Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Any other points or thoughts or shameless promotions from anybody? All welcome in the last couple of minutes, if there's anything. Nope. Okay. Well, if there's any of the steering group members who've got time to hold on, just a couple of bits to just talk through there. So, if not, I'll bid everybody a pleasant weekend. Do cheer on Leicester City for the FA Cup final, and I'll see you all next month.
Bye, friend.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers.
Thanks, Robin.
Yeah,
Bye.
cheers. Thanks everybody.
Thanks, Robin. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, no problem, Steve. Thank you for your time. Thank you. Ah, there we go, chaps.
Yep, we're down to the core.
Okay. Well,
down here, my cold's finished already.
Indeed. Well,
you want to stop the recording?
Oh yes.
That's a good idea.
Thank you, Akim.